We have a gentleman right at the back. I think it's Joe, is it?
It is? Oh, good guess, yes. It's Joe Croft Overbury. It's a bit loud. I'm not sure how many we've got time for, but a few from the panel. Certainly I want to hear Julie and Matt and probably Ronak's answer. If you could have a dictate where one well building measure was a legal requirement that would change the world, what's your number one feature to force upon the planet? Oh,
commercial or resi?
Well, let's go for commercial for now.
Julie's going to say air quality, so I'll say something else. We've done a lot of work around streetscape and, blank facades onto buildings, onto streets and how that impacts on people. Really interesting study with a neuroscientist, Colin Ellard, out in New York. Did a study of trust with a streetscape, and he presented this to my top team, and it happened to look very similar to a couple of British land buildings, so it's quite an impactful presentation. But basically, and without pointing, I used to work for Arup, but their facade here as well, steel and glass, flat onto the streetscape, the number of social interactions outside there, and trust encounters where people would ask strangers for help. Can I borrow your mobile phone? Can you give me directions to a local shop? That facade makes you want to get your head down and get from one end to the other as quickly as you can because there's no interaction onto the street. A much more jumbled up scape, such as Camden High Street or something like that, where you've got lots of doorways, lots of social interaction taking place, that slows people down, get them working at the human scale, eyes up, a lot more social interaction. So we've tried to bring a lot of that into our public realm improvement works now. So if you went to Paddington Central a couple of years ago, it's a 1970s business park, but now you'll see it with lots more benches, an urban walkway, a woodland walkway, a lot more things to slow people down and get them interacting.
Yes. The air quality aspect is very interesting. And also bearing in mind that some of it is already in building regulations in Part F, and it's never actually checked and monitored. So definitely. Just to add on the overlap, I think one of the reasons why the schemes overlap is that both ultimately go back to existing sound science, for example, guidelines from the World Health Organization. So it's reasonably robust in itself.
And I believe you wanted an answer from Ronak. There you go.
Well, I'm torn between fitness and mind, but I think I'll go for fitness. There's just a lot of benefits that you'd have by being active, both in the office and outside the office, that can, and this is purely my personal view, that has helped me a lot in the actual work that I do. So, yeah.
Great. Okay, let's take another question. Have we got any from this part of the audience? That stimulated somebody. So the gentleman with the pink tie.
Thank you. Sorry, my name's Paul Ajiboy from CTEC. Just to explain, CTEC, we do the scientific evaluation of the indoor environment quality issues. And on that, I just wonder, I think particularly from Matthew and Darren, how much faith do you have in sensors?
Not a huge amount at the moment. I think it really varies, and we're seeing a lot of new IoT devices coming onto the market, which are cheap and easy to connect, and people are collecting lots of data from them. But I come from a controls background, where things might seem, BMS systems might seem a bit archaic, but we know that the sensors within those are robust and proven, and they can be properly calibrated in a system. And I don't think we yet have that level of confidence with everything that's coming onto the market yet with sensors.
Darren, whilst you've got the mic, can I just ask, you mentioned in your presentation that WELL doesn't focus on everything. What did you mean by that, and what really is left out?
So I think more and more we're doing work around continuous monitoring of things, whether it's continuous collection of data from occupants or from sensors or whatever it is. So that was more what I meant, which kind of links to your question really, the importance of sensors and good sensor data. You know, if we can get those kind of sensors that work well into a building from the outset, then it will enable us to continue to collect that data and to do continuous evaluation.
Excellent. So Matt, what's British Land's approach to that in regards to sensors?
Well, I'd echo all of what Darren said. I'm really struggling, to be honest. So we want to measure York House in real time. Every person I go to describes a different methodology, a different standard of meter to use, a different location where to have that meter. So I think there's a real need for the industry to, get together and produce some clear guidance on what's recommended and how to do it, and what level of accuracy and confidence you can give to those kind of assessments.
Great. Paul, in your presentation you mentioned certain platforms and other things. What's your perspective on this?
Well, I think one of the key points that we can't forget is that sensors are here, and the availability of sensors and methods of measuring air quality, CO2, noise, etc., will increase. So as the apps become available for people's phone, we've got to accept that there is going to be a variance in quality and availability of that information, and have a structure in place as from supporting a landlord's perspective to actually measure and accurately report, and then engage with tenants who may have used their own sensors to measure their own space, and those sensors may not be accurate, but we certainly need to be able to answer that as an industry.
Yes, please come in, Matt.
Just popped into my head again there. We always seem to default to air quality sensors when we talk about sensors, but there are plenty of other sensors out there doing useful jobs for us: touch, proximity, location-based services, and things like that are starting to enable environments for IoT purposes and smart futures and things like that. So. Sorry, I should have made that clear when I spoke. I was talking about air quality predominantly, but there are others.
And the availability and the accuracy of those other types of sensors you just described, are they satisfactory? Are they good, or is it that's constantly evolving as the new technology?
I think that's constantly evolving as well. But
right.
Some of the things that we're playing around with can accurately tell you within a space of 6 meters where you're standing in this room and things like that. So I think it's needs and purposes as well. But the air quality is one particularly we'd like to see some action on.
Great. Okay. Anybody else want to come in?
Yeah, just to mention that there is a joined-up initiative at the moment that was launched last week, I think, between the BRE, the IWBI, Reset, and other industry partners to actually set a framework for equipment and methodologies. There's also a European committee working on that. So hopefully that will arrive at some point. At the moment, what we are recommending in practice is if you are going to stuff a building with sensors and you don't have unlimited budget, buy a few good quality calibrated one or rent them from, say, BRE or the BRE alongside the cheaper ones so that you can have sense checks against the good ones every so often.
Yeah, that's very important, isn't it? How do you know, where do you go? What's the buying decision? How do you know the quality and effectiveness of some of these sensors? So, okay, let's see if there are any other questions out there. So, the lady in the mustard top, am I closest to you? You might as well take it from me. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Diana Sanchez. I'm coming from Horley. My question is quite aligned with what you were discussing previously. So, basically, there are, in my opinion, two leading agendas in the built environment. One is this one, the health and well-being, and the other one is the intelligent or smart building agenda. And the question is, how can we make sure that we integrate both effectively and we don't end up building buildings super smart that doesn't fit any purpose at all? How can we put technology to serve a purpose on that? So, for example, linking with your slide about the pyramid, from moving from delivering buildings that are safe environment to delivering buildings that basically provide an experience to the user. The need for flexibility and adaptability is key. But we're dealing with fixed assets. We know that BIM level 3 is coming, so BIM, operational BIM. So how can we make sure that we're really integrating both agendas? And in my opinion, the health and well-being agenda needs to put some direction to the intelligence building agenda. I would like to know your thoughts about this.
Okay, who would like to go first with that question? Please, yeah, take the one.
I think the first thing we have to do is understand that buildings are for people. And so as building technologists, building scientists, we can, and I do see this, we get bogged down in a lot of detail, a lot of, we talk about sensors, talk about measurement, talk about Internet of Things. And when we come to buildings are used by people who want to come to work, enjoy the space as much as possible, be as productive as they can. And we can't forget that. So don't, as building designers, as operators of building, let's not box ourselves in a room, think that's it. Consider materiality, what needs to be measured, what needs to be established. And certainly from my environment where I work, in the majority of cases in operational buildings that are already pre-existing, is work an agenda that focuses on the key points and build from there. And so it's a connected approach that takes the view of what people want forward.
Anybody else like to add to that, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Ultimately, I think all these agendas are connected. So we were talking about sensors there, smart buildings, how you use those sensors to work together to control the systems in there. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that ultimately these are buildings for people. And if we're talking about health and well-being, actually, an awful lot of that is about the perception of how you feel in the building. And how you feel will be different from the person next to you. So, there is a fair amount of subjectivity in that whole process, and all of these things are just tools in order to allow a better degree of information to be provided back, a better feedback loop in there. And I suppose from our point of view, that's the key thing. It's how all of these things can be used to give you a flavour, in terms of how, in a sense, how well ready a building is, but at the end of the day, it's going to be about how it's managed, how it's maintained, and how you perceive that space. Okay, so my perception at the moment is that you're probably a little bit hungry, and you'd probably like to move around a bit. And so what I'm going to do, and please forgive me, for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to ask a question and you have one, please go and speak to one of the speakers over the lunch break. But we're going to call a close to this session. We're going to start again at 2:10. But before we do that, I would like you to join me and say thank you to the expert speakers. Thank you.